Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I am the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. W- Most organizations don't have a technology problem, they have an ownership problem. And today's guest, Antonio Taylor, has spent more than 26 years in IT and executive leadership, helping companies confront exactly that. He's worked with organizations navigating growth, risk, and transformation, bringing executive level clarity to technology decisions without adding unnecessary complexity or headcount. So, in this episode, we'll explore how technical professionals can communicate more effectively with non-technical stakeholders, drive clearer decisions, stronger alignment, and better business outcomes. Welcome to Teach the Geek interviews, Antonio.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Great. So, first question: would you say is the biggest mistake you see technical teams make when communicating with non-technical stakeholders?
This is pretty easy one. It's pretty common. Is most of the time the conversation stays technical. And most of the times when having these conversations, there's an understanding that just because I say it, we should be okay and move in that direction. And that just doesn't work in business because there's no real understanding of what I'm actually saying when I'm talking in technical terms. And so I think probably the number one issue that I see with technical teams that they have as it relates to how they communicate is we talk technology. We talk technology for technology's sake. I'll even say that, right? There is not even a real business alignment with some of the things that come out, or we don't know how to articulate that from a communications perspective in a way that makes the business understand the relevance in what we're trying to do from a technology perspective. So it's pretty much just a language barrier. This is pretty much what it is.
Yeah, it's like one person speaking English, the other person doesn't understand English, and a whole bunch of
Yeah.
miscommunication happens because of that. I think you're absolutely right about that, Antonio. When I first started Teach the Geek, it was based on my own struggles working as an engineer and having to give presentations in front of management, most of whom weren't technical. And I would give these presentations, just like you said, as a technical person focusing on the technical. And yet, what would happen is I get a whole bunch of questions afterwards that I thought I had answered during the presentation. But because I was speaking in a language that they couldn't understand, well, now I'm getting all these questions. And if I was trying to get out of there fast before, now I'm really trying to get out of there fast. It never was fast.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's common. That's something that we commonly see, especially early on in our technical careers.
Yeah, 100%. So when you hear a technical explanation that really works, would you say makes it effective?
Um, It has to tie back to the business reasons, right? There has to be value. And as a technical executive who's been in the space over 26 years, I tell people all the time, the technology works. I mean, I know people my vendor partners are gonna frown up at me for saying this, but they're all the same. Apple is Apple. The Macintosh and the Windows device, they both at the core of what they are, they're both, computing devices, right? It becomes a preference at that point. So me selling tech doesn't really work, right? AWS and Azure, they're both cloud platforms, right? They're gonna have some strengths over the other, right? And so we got to get out of the weeds of trying to justify the tool and justify the tech and figure out how this tech brings value to the business. When you start thinking about business continuity reasons, when you start thinking about redundancy and disaster recovery, when you start thinking about, the ability to scale, at a rapid rate, those are things that technology does and helps us do. And I've seen most success for myself, especially, is when I understand, wait, let's talk business. Right. And let the technology drive the business decisions that are being made. Now technology becomes a value and not just something that somebody wants to do for fun.
Yeah, I agree with you there too, Antonio. And it just harkens back to when I was working as an engineer and just the whole idea even of thinking in terms of business outcomes. It never even occurred to me to do it.
Hmm.
And it was just and even if it did at the time, I probably would have thought this is someone else's job. I'm the
Yeah.
technical person. I'm supposed to think about technical stuff. And then when I come and give presentations and I tell you about the technical stuff, well, if I understand it, you should understand it too, right? Well,
Yeah.
no, that's not what happens at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Absolutely.
yeah, ever. But like, okay, wonderful. Okay, so then when it comes to, let's say, these technical teams and this importance of becoming better communicators, what should team communication risk? or how should team communicators or how should teams communicate risk, especially if they're speaking to non-technical people on technical risk?
This is going to be a common theme for me. You're going to hear me say this. You always tie this back to the business. And so, as a technologist and as an engineer, we're wired to think technology, right? And you said something very key here. You said, "Hey, if it makes sense to me, why didn't it make sense for you? Why don't we go to the cloud? Why don't we put throw on this layer of cybersecurity?" That doesn't work with the business because you got to understand, finance is thinking about finance, marketing is thinking about marketing, sales are thinking about sales, HR is thinking about people, the CEO is thinking about the business. CEOs think about operations. They're not thinking about technology, right? And when you start thinking about talking about risk, you got to relate it back to the business, right, outcomes of what's trying to be achieved. I'll give you a really quick story. So one day I was asked to present to the board on our cyber strategy, to the executive team on our, I got a 30-second cyber, hey, give us an update on cyber. You know how that goes, 30 seconds, right? Give us an update on cyber. And I was like, you know what? I shouldn't talk about the tools. I should just show them something. So I put on the screen a heat map, right? And in this heat map, we had a cyber software that showed all the unsuccessful logins that have been tried on our organization over the past week. And I specifically showed the CEO, CFO, COO, and some other sales leaders, right, who were all in the room. They look at this map and they're like, wait, we don't have anybody in Asia. Why is somebody trying to log in Asia? And I was like, exactly. This is why cybersecurity is important because there are bad actors that are all the way across the globe who are trying to log into you guys' accounts. That's why MFA is important because that's the only thing that stopped them from getting in. When I showed them that map, the game changed. They were like, so my presentation went from 30 seconds to 10 minutes because they started asking questions like, what do we need to do? How can I make sure that I'm locked in on MFA? And so I showed them value. I never named the tool. I never named the tool. I just showed them, hey guys, there are people, look, in the past week, somebody's tried to log in and use 75 times and they live out of the country. When I showed them that, it changed the game, right? Because now I'm not talking about tools. I'm talking about protecting the business through their authentication methods. And so it became one of those things where, hey, if you want to add value, you want to show value, you want to discuss risk, show them.
That was an excellent example, Antonio, and I'm sure that the executives appreciated it because yes, when you see the heat map and you see all these logins at this various place, and it's not you. So then
Yeah.
now you've made it real to them. It's not something that's technical, that's over their head. I don't even understand the jargon you're talking about anyway, but wait, someone tried to log into my account? How many
Yeah.
times? Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
we gotta do something about
Yeah, yeah.
that.
It raised the level of awareness to them. And so at that point, security became a part of the culture. I would get, executives who'd be flying in an airport and they would ping me and be like, hey, I'm in the airport. Is it okay for me to get on the public like these? And I'm like, I'm so glad you called me because in the past, you guys would have just jumped on, got an open screen. Somebody could have came in and had some type of scanner right beside you. You didn't even know, pulling all your data. And so it just brought some awareness now security, not only, it just became a culture of the business. And it wasn't even a technical thing anymore. It just became the culture of how we do business.
I'm really curious then when it comes to your approach to giving these types of presentations, whether they're 5 minutes or 30, whatever the time is, when it comes to giving these type of presentations to these non-technical people, do you have a process for putting such a presentation together? And if so, what is it?
So yeah. So number one, this is not going to be technical at all. Number one, I have to understand what's important to the stakeholders that are in the room, right? And so I got to spend time pre-meeting, making sure I meet with the people, making sure I'm having relationships, I'm having conversation with with all these individuals, so I can understand what's important to them. Because I said earlier, I remember finance is thinking about finance. They're not thinking about anything else. They're not thinking about technology at all. They're just thinking about, hey, I'm just trying to log into Power BI or my spreadsheets or whatever that is. So I don't tell me about a tool that you're trying to buy that's going to protect. I'm trying to work, right? And so I got to find out what your pain points are. Listen, I was a systems engineer, so I understand where you're coming from. You said earlier I was going in and explain the technical thing, and people look at me with glossy eyes. They're like, "What are you talking about?" I got tired of being told no on all these. Oh my God, this is such phenomenal technology. We should do this. I got tired of being told no, and I was like, I got to figure out how to penetrate their thought process and help them understand what I'm trying to bring to them actually is what's best for the organization. So for me, it starts with, hey, I got to understand the needs of the business, right? I got to understand because at that point, I now get to bring value to the business. And so it really just comes down to that. The beauty that most technical people don't understand is I got technology on the back burner. I don't have to think about technology. I can speak about technology all day long. I just got to get you to ask the right questions, right? As a business leader, how do we protect ourselves? Well, how do we create redundancy? How do we have business continuity? Oh, thank you so much for asking because this is how we do this. We need to have always availability on our server. Like now I get to talk technology, right? But I first got to pull you in. And by pulling you in, I got to identify what your pain points are. So I start with collaboration, understanding what their pain points are, and then I build technology that drives the initiative that they have for the individual departments and as a group as a whole.
Yeah. Your point about figuring out what's important to the people you're speaking to is one that I eventually came to. Certainly, when I first started giving those presentations, I knew I was talking in front of the CEO, CTO, COO, C fill in the blanco, all these C people, but I
Yeah.
wasn't putting presentations in a way that would appeal to them specifically. I would slap
Yeah.
slides together. I would get up there. I'd read the slides. I wouldn't even look at people, so I didn't even know whether they were paying attention or not. And so, but when I was done reading, I'd look up, and then a whole bunch of hands are up. So that's
Yeah.
ask questions. But then,
Yeah.
but what I eventually ended up doing is I would reach out to their admins and ask them because it's difficult to get time with the C level people. They're busy.
Mhm.
So I go to their admins, ask them what kind of information do I have to have in this presentation that would appeal to your boss. And a lot of times
Mhm.
I get some really interesting, insightful answers, and I just make sure, well, okay, this is what needs to be in there to
Yeah.
help this person do their job better because ultimately that's the goal.
That's the goal. Yeah, absolutely. That's the
Yep.
goal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And as I said, it's something that I came to eventually, and but I'm hopeful with this podcast and with everything else I'm doing with Teach the Geek, other people were perhaps earlier in their careers, they could figure it out quicker than I did because it's
Yeah, and I love that idea, and I'll put this out there that I'll share with everybody who listen to this, especially those who are early in their career. At the end of the day, a company is in business to either make money or help people, one of the two, right? And so, as a technologist, your ideas are never going to be as big as the company. So get out of your own way. Like literally, I know you want to introduce that technology, but if it's going to slow them down, you're going to get no all day long. If it's going to impact sales, is it going to impact my ability to reach customers? Is it going to impact my ability to see patients in a timely manner? I don't care how great you tell me the technology is. If it's going to have an impact on the business, which is the reason why we're all employed, we're gonna always struggle. And so get out of your technology way. Get out of your way, right? It's not, I don't care. The shiny tools, they will never work in a business because the business typically sees technology as a cost center anyway. So now I'm gonna spend more money and I can't even, see that on the P&L sheet, right? So get out of your technologist's way. The tool works. Now let's convince them why they need it.
Yeah, yeah, I fully agree with what you're saying, Antonio. And when I worked as an engineer, I wasn't even thinking about, what's so interesting? Money ended up in my account every other week, but I never thought about where it came from.
Yeah.
It just appeared as it's supposed
Yeah.
to appear. It's the first to
Yeah.
15th. You know what time it
Yeah.
is. So,
Yeah.
but then well, now I think about it now, is like we had to sell a lot of something
Hmm.
to be able to pay all those salaries because oftentimes in an organization, salaries are the biggest expense that they have.
Yes.
And
Uh-huh.
so but yet I think a lot of us we just think that the technology matters because it matters
Hmm.
to us. It's what we think
Hmm.
is interesting, what we think is
Hmm.
important, and yet we then put this in front of people and don't understand. Why don't they understand the importance of this? Because we
Hmm.
haven't put it in their context. We haven't put it in a way that matters to them, and we just assume it will matter. And oftentimes, until it matters, like your example you gave, it doesn't matter.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I'm curious when it comes to these, this whole idea of speaking to non-technical people on technical matters. Is this something that you've always been good at? And if not, what'd you do to get better at it?
So I think it's always been good. I like to tell people this. I'm a business person who happens to be very good at tech. So I've always been curious on, and I think most technologists are like this, they don't realize it. But as an engineer, we're always curious on how things work, under the hood per se, right? For whatever reason, when we get to business, we just kind of get stuck in our own lane and we want to get siloed off into our own little world and we lose that curiosity. I've always been curious. I've always, just like I was curious on, hey, if I write this line of code, I wonder what it does. Like just like I was curious about, as I was coming in my career, hey, I want to get this certification because I want to be better understanding of how SQL works, right? And how you can have, different things and you can bring all this data into SQL. I'm dating myself now, but hey, we can move from Access. Now we can get all these huge databases into SQL, and now we can have all this data we can use for a report. I've always been curious. And so in business, I'm always like, hey, I want to know how does the engine turn? Like yeah, I love to show up at work and I love to do my part, but I want to know like how does the engine turn? And so in my mind at a very early age when I started getting into business, I've always been that curious. I'm the guy that goes, if the CEO looks at me and says, "Man, you're a phenomenal engineer. I want you to run the business while I'm out of town next week." I want to be able to run the business, right? And which means I got to understand the business. So I've always been curious, right? Which I think we should all, by nature, I think we should always remain curious. I think IT people were so innovative that it kind of goes against us because we don't want to be innovative outside of anything but technology. And I think for me, it's always been, wait, hold on. I just want to understand how this works. For anybody who doesn't do that, I would just challenge you, like, get out of your armchair, like, get out of your seat, like, go around and find out, hey, how does business work, right? You can't just always stay in your bubble and just do your part, right? Especially when you're trying to move up, when you're trying to, go higher up in the rankings, when you're trying to get these executive level roles. The higher up you get, the less you talk about technology. I don't know if people understand this, but the higher you get, the less you talk about technology. You're not talking about technology. You're talking about business strategy. You're talking about scaling. You're talking about opportunities to go into a different market. You're in a room with people who are making these decisions. And when they come to you, you can't say, I think we should go to Azure. That doesn't work, right? And so for me, I've always been curious in that space. And I've always, looked at that as an opportunity for me to do that. And I would just challenge people the same.
I'm now, when you're speaking, I'm curious, Antonio, to get your thoughts on this. What would you do as a technical person if you are getting requests from non-technical people that just technically are perhaps unreasonable or just not workable within the confines of what the technology can do? How do you address that?
Number one, you just be open and honest, right? I think going back to what I said earlier, when you have that relationship and that collaboration, this is a great question because it's pivoting me into something else. But when you have that openness and that collaboration, there's trust, right? And so because I know Neil trusts Antonio, I'm okay saying, hey, I know you want that technology, but that's just it just can't do that. Right. Or for whatever reason, we just can't perform that level of work. Because there's trust there. And the reason why there's trust there is because I showed you a heat map that I'm trying to say, hey, I'm trying to protect you. So now, hey, Antonio knows what he's talking about. He's not just saying yes or no for the sake of saying yes or no. He's not the no police, right? He's really one of these people where I can talk to and say, hey, okay, let me run this by Antonio to see if this makes sense, which is how it should be. Because what ends up happening on the opposite of that is you have shadow IT. Is you have people saying, you know what, I'm not even going to ask Neil. I'm just going to go buy it because he keeps telling me no. He doesn't tell, well, no, you can't have that because it's not in our policy. Okay, that's great. That sounds amazing. But you still have told me no to something that I know can help my department go faster, scale more, which and ultimately is going to help the business. Think about that dynamic of tension that you have. I found something that can help my team work faster, which is going to bring us more business, but I'm being told no by IT because of the policy. All right. And so I got to have a trusting relationship where I can say, hey, before you even go look at that software, bring me in the room. Right. Because I want the same thing you want. I want to make your life better. I want to scale the business. I want to grow. So I'm not the no, please. Let me talk to the vendor. Let me talk to the person who's selling you this just so I can make sure that security protocols are followed. And once we get all that ironed out, sure, let's go do what we're trying to do. But I still think that comes back to that collaboration, that relationship, and that trust.
Yeah, it's interesting when you were talking, Antonio, and bringing your example of the shadow IT and a group just going basically above around you and buying technology anyway because it benefits them. It's like, oh, it's against policy. Well, yeah, to hell with the policy. I'm doing what I need to do to help my
Yes.
team.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
you definitely don't want to be in that situation if just like you said, if you trust the IT people that they're on your side. They're not just saying no just to say no. There are trade-offs. There's nuance that perhaps you don't understand that, but if you
Mhm.
trust them, then you'll trust that they are trying to do what's in the best interest of you and the organization generally. It's not just, as you said, no just to say no.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reality of the fact is when you start having these collaborative conversations and you start seeing, some of the stuff that people are doing manually or some of the time that it takes, you're like, oh my God, I can help you solve this problem by introducing technologies. That's how you get the technology conversation. And it's like, wait, you're taking 6 hours to call customers back? We should automate that. And now you guys have more time to be free and do more advanced level work as opposed to just picking up the those are the times when those conversations come in because now I'm not only just saying, I need you to listen to me and listen to what I'm saying. I'm also learning from you on how, hey, okay, so this is what you use for your podcast. Hey, did you know you can do this? And now you got all this extra ability. It just becomes a conversation now where it's like, hey, we're both treading in the same direction.
Yeah, and if they trust you, they're going to be more likely to listen. Just
Yes.
based on your example
Yeah.
of it takes 6 hours for you to make calls, but if the person doesn't trust you, they could say, "Well, this is the way we've always done it, and this is the
Yeah.
way we're going to continue to do it because this is what we're comfortable with." But if they trust you and say automation can really help you in giving you some time back, well, now they're going to be more likely to listen. So yeah,
Yeah.
I fully agree with you. It really does come down to building trust with people, building relationships with people, and just but I guess it all has to start with them understanding what you're talking about in the first place.
Yes.
It's really difficult
Yes.
to trust people you don't
Yes.
understand. That's for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. So then, what do you think an organization can do to help their technical teams just become better at communicating with non-technical stakeholders?
So I think number one is professional development should be primary for every organization. It should be part of your goal setting. It should be part of your performance evaluation where, hey, you know what, we're gonna help you grow as an individual. I'm gonna stretch you beyond maybe what you're comfortable with by offering, these trainings and these sessions that could give you the tools necessary to start communicating better or start having these more impactful conversations with the business. And not only am I just going to send you to these resources and to these courses, I'm actually going to now give you actionable items. I'm now going to start challenging you as an individual, even in your individual departments. Hey, you're going to lead the meeting this week. I know it's a meeting with our team, but you're going to have to put together, a presentation and you're going to lead. And we're not going to talk about technology. We're going to talk about what the business. You give people the opportunity through number one training, and then you say, hey, don't just put that book on the shelf and never apply it. Let's apply it. Right. And then you just kind of go from there. So, you balance that out between, hey, I do want you to be skilled in your technical space. So I want to make sure you're getting that training as well. But you also do need those soft skills. And so I do want to train you on, how do you talk with our customers and how do you, for IT, the internal team is always our customers, the employees. So how do you deal with your employees? They're your internal customers. So I think professional development should be part of like the goal. Like I don't know how, back in some of my roles, we did quarterly goals. In every one of my quarterly goals, you had several things that you had that you had to make sure that you touch. Professional development was one of them in every quarter, and so it's like, hey, I got to get my people trained up. If for nothing else, it provides great succession management plan. If I hit the lottery, I'm leaving. I'm sorry, I love you guys, but I'm out. I'm $900 million in now. There's no need for me to work anymore. I'm gonna do some philanthropy work. I'm gonna go help some third world countries. Somebody needs to be able to take the reins, right? And I got to care enough about the business that I'm employed at that I say, hey, when I leave, I want you to still be successful. Well, if I leave and all the knowledge goes to me, I've done a terrible job as a leader at preparing my people for my exit. And so I got to start training people up. I got to let them, hey, you know what? If I identify some top people with leadership potential, hey, you know what? You're gonna shadow me this week. You're gonna go to the meetings with me because I want you to hear what's going on in these conversations. I want you to hear how these decisions are made. I want you to see firsthand what's being done. And then we're gonna debrief. I want you to tell me, hey, what did you hear? Like, what was different about that? And most of the time they'll come out and say, we didn't talk about technology at all. I was like, we never do. Right. And it just kind of opens up their awareness of what they need to look for when they're going in these rooms.
What would you say to someone that's in the technology and they push back and think this all this soft skills that you're talking about, that's not my job. I'm here for technology.
Yeah, that's great. Listen, I'll answer that with the same way I'll answer AI questions. At some point in time, you're going to be replaceable. Because if an organization can hire me with the technical skills, but I also can communicate on a business level, who do you think the company's gonna look at? Right? I'm just adding more value. It's not that you're not valuable, it's not that you're not important, it's not that the jobs you're doing, but at some point in time, you're gonna have to come in and explain to somebody, even if it's a CFO, hey, why are we spending so much money on the cloud? right? And if all you know is, well, that's how much Azure charges us, they're gonna look at you and be like, okay, I question your ability now as a technician because you can't even tell me why we're spending all this money. You're my biggest expense in the company, and all you said is, well, somebody bought this, and I don't. That doesn't work, right? And so when you start having people with those skills that can do that job, you're ultimately going to see yourself being phased out. And that's just the reality of the fact. The reason why I mentioned AI, I tell people in AI all the time, I teach about AI. People are like, is AI going to replace people? I was like, no, people that know AI are going to replace people, right? Because if I know AI and I can do the job 40% quicker, a company just does itself a disservice when they don't move in that direction because now your competitors are going to be so far ahead of you because you are not moving at the rate that needs to be moved. And so I would say to anybody who's sitting here saying, no, I'm just an engineer, that's fine. You can say that. And you may still be able to be successful up until a period of time where somebody else comes in and says, hey, I can do this and that. Right? Then it becomes a question on the company, like, what's more valuable to me? Somebody who just sits here and we can't talk to them about anything, and every time we talk to them, they give me this bland answer. Or do we want somebody who can come in and say, no, I can tell you and explain to you in layman terms how this all works and why we need this?
Yeah. You're speaking to you're speaking to the choir, Antonio, and I think you just don't. Ultimately, you don't want to be that disgruntled technical person thinking that they deserve something, but someone who was better at communicating what people need to know so that they can do their jobs better. That person got the opportunity, not you.
Yes,
So now you're in
yes,
your cubicle mad. But
yes,
there's only one person you should be mad at, really, and
yes,
it's the person you look in the mirror at. That guy
man.
or that person for sure.
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely.
This has been a great conversation, Antonio. Thank you so much for being a guest. How can people get in touch with you?
So you can either go to my LinkedIn profile, which is linkedin.com. My handle is Antonio D. Taylor. You get so much information on that. I wrote a book a month ago, last year called Stop Trying to Be a Leader. And it kind of touches on a lot of what we kind of talked about today. The premise of the book is stop trying to be what you already are. And so it's a great read, but you can follow me on LinkedIn and just follow me there where you get the bulk of what my content is, and you'll be able to reach out to me, personally if you want to have a conversation.
Wonderful. Well, everyone, that marks the end of another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And if you want to know more about that, you can go to teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, Antonio.
Thank you very much.